Hello Internet, this is Irina, the Siberian who's gone international, and today I'm gonna tell you about my experience participating in Free Navalny protests in Russia. If you've seen my previous video, you know that I was totally outraged and left speechless after what happened to the Russian opposition leader Navalny when he returned to Russia after having been poisoned in August. So after his return, I've been following the news really closely, and I just felt that I cannot stay away from all of this, that it's my duty to do something. So I got on a train and came to Russia to participate in a protest because I wanted to show that there are people who totally disagree with the total lawlessness and the craziness which is happening to Navalny and to Russian judicial system in general. In my Instagram you can see the video where I'm explaining my reasoning in more details, but today I'm just gonna tell about my experience of what it's like to be a protester in the police state called Russia. So the first protest was on January 23rd and I was scared, honestly. I was preparing like for a war, because if you've been following the news from Belarus, there the police has gone totally mental in August and they were like literally torturing people. Some people died there, and everyone who participated in the protests in Russia had the reasons to believe that it might happen here too. So I had warm clothes, I was prepared to be detained, to spend a couple of nights in the police station. I had the numbers of the organizations which help protesters written on my hand. I had my passport and everything. I knew my rights, I knew which chapters of constitutions I must quote in order not to witness against myself. So it was scary, but I still felt like I have to do that. So the fun part started right away. It turned out that the police blocked a lot of bridges leading to St. Petersburg city center. They closed down the metro stations, and we were walking to the city center, and in order to cross the bridge we had to take a cab, because otherwise it was impossible, because it was closed for pedestrians. But we took a cab and we safely arrived to the square where it was supposed to take place, and we arrived a little bit earlier than the announced time, and I think because of that we witnessed the police chasing the protesters, trying to scare them off. They say that the most dangerous time to participate in the protest is right before the start and after it kind of has ended, because the police is the most brutal when there is a few people. So I think that is why we did see police chasing people, going into the crowd, forming chains, detaining some people, but soon enough the crowd got pretty big, so they kind of stopped doing it for a while, though they still were trying to prevent people gathering on that big square. And that is, well, I'm pretty sure about that. Well, it's a fact actually, because they did not want to let us have a picture which would show how many people actually showed up. And this is the tactic they've been using for the rest of the protests. They were just trying to separate people into smaller groups so that they wouldn't manage to be all together in one place at the same time, because this is what shows how many people do not support what is happening now. And there was a lot of people, and I think behind every person who was there stands, I don't know, another 100 or more who didn't come, because I'm telling you, it takes a lot of courage to come there, because there is a risk of being fined, of being detained, of being expelled. I mean, it's not really a risk, but the propaganda before the protest, they were scaring the students that they will be expelled if they will participate in the protests. I know that some employers were scaring their employees that they will be fired if they will participate, and a lot of people, their life situation doesn't allow them to express their position publicly. And I see that on my social media, that a lot of people are actually being silent, even though I know that they do not support all the circus, all that ridiculousness which is being done by the government right now. But anyway, when there was quite a lot of people already in that square and the park which is next to it, people have decided to go to the Nevsky Avenue and march there. The problem with that one was that it was blocked by the police, But still, people did manage to get on the Gorokhovaya street, and there you can see how many people came, and the pictures from that street are awesome.
Выпускай! 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 Выпускай!
I've seen pictures that during the day people did manage to march on Nevsky, but I don't know where was I, but I didn't participate in that part. The only time I was on Nevsky during the day was when I was crossing it and I saw this huge line of police, and it is a weird feeling when you're like so close to them and there are, I don't know, hundreds of them and you know that they're not on your side. It's not a pleasant feeling. So basically during the day people were moving a lot. First everyone met on the Senate Square, then they marched to the Mars field, the field of Mars. Sorry if I'm translating the names incorrectly. And then closer to the end of the day, when it was already dark, people got back to Nevsky Avenue and actually managed to take over the car lanes. And that was great because this is something that they've been trying to prevent the whole day. They really didn't want the crowd of protesters to manage to take over the main street of St. Petersburg, which would show how many people are there and are against what is happening right now.
Putin won! Putin won! Putin won! Putin won! Putin won!
I went home around 6 p.m. and only then I learned that there was this horrible case when the policeman kicked the armless woman who just asked them why are they detaining the young guy. And here is the video. And then the state propaganda has shown its face. I mean, like, I wasn't surprised because they've done it so many times before, but it just showed once again that they have absolutely no moral values. The main propagandist Solovyov said that the policeman didn't kick her, and that all the policemen must get a raise and must get a free accommodation, like free apartments. So I don't know if anyone still had any illusions left about the values of this state, then here is the perfect example of what they really are like. Then the story with this woman was just worsening all the time. They brought some guy there to apologize. They never showed his face, they never revealed his name. She was like naked under some tiny sheet when he came to apologize, so imagine the pressure she had, imagine how uncomfortable she felt. And also I heard that they didn't put the bandage on her head because it would look bad, so they didn't provide her the needed medical aid in order to not make it look bad on the TV. Anyway, so she kind of accepted the apology, but then later when she wasn't naked in front of a bunch of men in the police uniform, she said that no, it was weird. I want this guy to be punished. I want this guy to have some consequences. And after she said that, the officials got immediately interested why her son hasn't been to the army yet, is her daughter's living conditions are good enough, or maybe she should be taken away from the family. A week later, another protest was announced by Navalny's team, and that day the government has prepared much better because they have completely blocked Nevsky Avenue. It was impossible to get there. They closed down all the metro station, including the Vostania metro station, which is right next to the main train station of the city. I cannot imagine how many people have missed their trains. Actually, a lot of people truly believe that they will never dare to close down the Vostania station, exactly because they couldn't imagine that they will dare to mess up the plans of so many citizens by closing down the metro station, which is right next to the train station. But no, they closed it. I think taxi wasn't really an option either, because first of all, I've seen that that day the taxi rates were sometimes 5 times higher than normal, and also because all the streets were blocked, I'm not sure that it was possible to get to the train station by car, but I'm not sure. Anyway, well, original plan was to meet on Nevsky Avenue, on the small streets leading towards the Nevsky Avenue, but it was not possible because the government has literally brought an army of a small country to block that street from the protesters. Here is the good picture. So the last minute, Navalny's team has changed the meeting point, and it was a few blocks away from the main street. And when I arrived there, there was a granny who wished me to trip on my laces. I guess Putin is paying her really high pension since she's such a strong supporter of him. But yeah, it was a funny start. Quite a lot of people came that day too. I think that in St. Petersburg it was actually more than before. It's hard to tell, again, because the police was trying to separate the crowd into smaller groups all the time in order for people not to see how many people are actually there. But from my personal experience, on the first protest it was just 2 of us, on the second protest it was already 5 of us. And I think it's worth mentioning that it's the first time in the Russian history, in the Russian modern history, that so many cities have participated. It was really all the way from Vladivostok to Kaliningrad, and even the small regional cities took part in the protest. And in Yakutsk people came out when it was minus 52 outside. So yeah, I think the main difference for me between the first protest and the second one was the amount of police. I mean, during the first protest it was exceptionally high number. I didn't even know that we do have so many policemen. I guess all the taxes are spent either on increasing the head count of the police. Actually, there are like 4 types of police, I'm not gonna get into details. And then the rest of the tax money are spent on building palaces for Putin and buying expensive toilet brushes. Yeah, the toilet brush was one of the main symbols of the protest because it is something which was found in the Putin's palace according to the price lists and the receipts that Navalny's team found when they were doing this investigation. If you haven't seen it, please go ahead, I will leave the link in the description. Here is my picture with the toilet brush, which I'm pretty proud of. So there was lots of police, like so many. I really think that in St. Petersburg alone there was this army of policemen was bigger than the armies of some smaller countries. And this is scary because, you know, it feels really, really, really unfair because you come out to the street to express your disagreement with the total lawlessness which is happening. What is happening to Navalny is completely illegal now. They're not even trying to make it look legit. They're just doing whatever they want. They're killing or imprisoning people without even hiding it now. And when you try to go and peacefully protest, you just, you just go outside and that's it, to just show that you disagree with that. Because this is the only way left to send a message to the government that this is not okay. And in return, the government just sends an army of policemen against you. The policemen who are totally anonymous, they don't have their names written anywhere, you cannot see their faces, and all the lawless actions that they might take against you will go unpunished, as we've seen with this woman who was kicked. And this is so unfair and so depressing. I have this North Korea 1984, North Korea 1984 running through my head all the time that I'm here now. Anyway, I'm gonna continue telling about the second day of protests. At some point, while everyone was on that square, the Navalny's team has sent a message over Telegram that now we're going to Vostania station. And the crowd started going and we started going too. And then at some point when the column, the pretty big column, was walking, a huge bus with police has stopped and they crashed into this column and started detaining people. I got smashed by a crowd of people, so at some point I was like really like this, couldn't really move, because some people were running from the police, others were already standing against the wall, so there was no room. At some point somebody has opened the a door of one of the cafes, or like it was a bar, which was on that street, and about 30 of us got in, I think. I saw one guy who almost managed to get saved. He already touched the door handle of that cafe, but then like 2 policemen came and took him away. So we were hiding there for another 30 minutes. Then we decided to join the rest of the crowd. First we went to one of the metro stations in Sinaia, but it was completely blocked. Then the message came that now we're going to the Saint Isaac's Cathedral. Again, sorry if I'm translating the names incorrectly. And there was quite a lot of people on the square, also a lot of police, and I was kind of far away from the main crowd, so I missed this scene that I'm gonna show you in a minute, but I heard it. So at some point the policemen started banging on their shields, trying to scare people off, and somehow people did not get scared. Actually, this is something I noticed during the second protest, that people were getting scared much less frequently than before, because before it was enough just to start running toward them and a crowd would start running away. This time they were making the scary sound, and I think that I would get scared if I was there, but as you can see, these brave people didn't, they just started clapping.
Они находятся с двух сторон, да, все верно. На самом деле вот этот устрашающий жест очень часто его используют силовики. Я такое видела и в Минске. Вот этот шум как бы должен напугать.
А посмотрите на эту картинку, люди аплодируют. Маша, извини, я тебя прерываю. Люди аплодируют, протестующие не расходятся, они аплодируют в ответ на этот страшный бой в щиты, которым пытаются испугать протестующих ОМОНовцы.
That day they detained even more people than before. In Moscow and St. Petersburg there was not enough room anymore to keep all the detained people in the police station. Some people were spending a day or 2 in the buses because they just couldn't process all of them. And so that was Sunday the 31st, and then on the 2nd of February there was Navalny's trial, which had led to the 3rd protest. Of course, even though it didn't make any sense, it was a total circus, they did decide to give him a real jail term, so now they did put him in prison for 2 years and 8 months. This case is totally fabricated, it doesn't make any sense. If you want, I can make a video about it, but there's a lot of information about it on the internet. You can read it yourself or watch another video about it, but just trust me, it's just like circus. They're not even trying to make it look legal. It's obvious that he's a political prisoner, that he's being punished for daring to go against Putin and his gang. Anyway, that date after the judge decided to put him in jail, people were called out to go on the streets and to protest, but it was Tuesday night. The notice was really short, like half an hour. The police has blocked all the metro stations and sent hundreds of the policemen to the main streets well beforehand, so which kind of shows that they knew the result before it even happened. But I did go to Nevsky Avenue to see what's happening there, and there was a bunch of people, so people were again screaming that Putin is a thief, that Navalny must be released. The cars which were passing by were showing their support. Here is the video that I filmed. But the quantity of people was kind of small, because again it was really difficult to get there, the notice was really short, and the policemen have gone totally mental. In St. Petersburg I've seen that the minivan with the police just stops and starts detaining everyone they see. It happened next to me twice. People, when they see the police, they start running. I was like, whatever. So I just was standing there, and it looks like they're like zombies, you know, they react to movement, so they didn't pay attention to me, but they ran after the ones who were running away, even though they were not doing anything illegal. And this is what feels the most crazy about it, you know, you just walk on the main street of your city, and that's enough to be detained and to get a huge fine, a lot of threats that you will have some problems in the future. And this is just, I cannot express how sad it makes me feel. But in Moscow it was even crazier. This video is from Moscow. So the people are screaming that we are not armed, we are not armed, and the police just starts beating them up. For no reason at all. The people are just standing, they're not doing anything illegal. Well, according to Russian propaganda and the officials, everyone who participated in this protest has broken the law because the protest was not approved by the government. But you know, this law is totally stupid because this law has been invented specifically in order to not approve any kind of protest that the government doesn't like. And it's crazy that some people are actually using this as an argument. Also, they're saying that it's because of coronavirus. Well, you know, when you walk on the street, the chances of contracting a coronavirus are pretty slim. But if you put 28 people into one bus and then keep them there for 24 hours or longer, then it increases. Another ridiculous thing about all these protests is that all the danger was coming only from the police. Because if the police wasn't there, people would just walk on the street, express their views, and that's it. But because of the police, people were beaten up, including the journalists. Here is the video how the policeman is beating up the journalist. And then the police put them into these overcrowded buses, overcrowded police stations, and then the state propaganda is telling that it's the protesters who are the troublemakers. And the more you see the situation with your own eyes, you know, when you are in that protest, you see what is actually happening. You see the police chasing people, detaining them for no reason, giving them huge fines. By the way, the fines are really huge. The smallest ones, I think, are 10,000 rubles, but the medium salary that the person is getting is like 40,000. So imagine getting a fine which is a quarter of your salary. That's a lot. That's a huge stopping factor for people when they think about participating or not. So yeah, the more you see the real picture, the more ridiculous the picture presented in the state media looks like, because they were saying that the police was giving out masks, giving out hot tea with cookies, and helping to change the tires. There is my favorite TikTok, which actually made me laugh hysterically when I saw it. I'm gonna insert it into the video with the translation. So first you see what's the state propaganda is showing, and then you see what's really been happening with this generic Google Translator voice talking on behalf of the police. Just watch it.
Полицейские успевали раздавать медицинские маски, а в Москве всем желающим даже горячий чай с печеньем предлагали. Поменяли колесо у машины автоледи.
Возьмите маску, пожалуйста. Пойдемте пить чай. Совсем замерз, тебе нужно согреться. Подождите, вы забыли печенье. Не переживайте, я раньше работал на шиномонтажке.
By the way, a lot of people were detained randomly. They really weren't participating in the protest. They were just walking by and they still got detained. And I cannot even imagine what it felt like, because, you know, I was prepared to be detained. I know my rights, I know how to act, I know who to call. But people who have absolutely no clue what is happening, that must be really scary for them. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention. So there are now these volunteering organizations which are helping the protesters who were detained. They're sending them lawyers and, you know, help. But now the police stations have this new strategy that they do not let the lawyers in. So people are completely cut off from the outside world, and they're being often threatened there. Their rights are being violated. A lot of people were forced to open their mobile phone to give the code to the police. A lot of people were forced to give their fingerprints, even though you do not have to do any of that, but it's difficult not to crumb under the pressure applied by like 5 policemen when you're totally alone there without a lawyer and without anyone. But what's great, at least people who got fined, they are receiving help now. I'm following this blogger, Maxim Katz now, and for the last 4 days he's been doing streams where people are donating to help the protesters, the detained protesters, to pay the fines, and I've donated a lot of money myself this way. Well, this video is getting pretty long. I hope that you will be following the situation from now on. I guess any publicity helps. You can donate to the volunteering organizations which are helping the protesters, or Navalny's organization. I will leave the link in the description. And goodbye for now. Hope I will not get arrested while I'm here. I'm not even joking.